च श्री रूपम साग्रजातां सहगना रघुनाथान्वितां तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजना सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पदान् सहगना ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृष्णुभानु सुत देवे प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. So we were discussing the introduction to the Gita. I'll just open up, but I'll keep talking in the meantime. Just bear with me while I'm trying to open it up. Excuse me. So we are discussing the introduction to Bhagavad Gita as it is. And as we all know, Bhagavad Gita as it is by far the most widely distributed version of the Gita all over the world. You can take a hint by the fact that this year we have Gita Jayanti that is coming up in just 3 more days. So 25th Friday is Gita Jayanti, and which is being observed as World Gita Day. And many ISKCON devotees have come together and they have taken a resolution to distribute 2 million Gitas all over the world um, by the end of December. So that also gives a hint, in 3 months from October to December, distributing 2 million copies of a book, that is, like, I would say, that is unprecedented, and I'm sure we will be able to exceed that. Right now it looks like it's difficult, but we know that for Bhadra Purnima, the devotees had taken a resolution to distribute 10,000 Bhagavatam sets. And I think what the total number of sets that were distributed all over the world was, I think, about 17,000. So they exceeded by about 70% for Bhagavatams. But still, Bhagavad Gita is, if you compare Bhagavatam, we have 18 volumes in Bhagavatam, but the number of copies that is being distributed for Bhagavad Gita is far more than Srimad Bhagavatam. So actually, many of us don't realize it, but what is happening is, in ISKCON there is a not just book distribution; it's a book distribution revolution that is happening. And of course, a lot of the credit goes to Vaisheshika Prabhu. He's the book distribution acharya for ISKCON. But it's a revolution. You can just imagine 2 million is a very big number, and 2 million copies of one book getting distributed all over the world. That's like unprecedented. I was on a call with, so there is every week there is a call that is happening, and every time there is a celebrity that comes. So this time we had Radhanath Maharaj, who had come to inspire the devotees. And just on Zoom, there were about 500 devotees from all over the world. There were devotees from Africa, Nigeria, Australia, Russia, and his class was getting converted into at least 2 different languages, Mexican and Russian, Spanish and Russian. So it's like, it's huge. Last week we had His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj, who had come to inspire the devotees. So it's a revolution. And of course, we know Prabhupada had pioneered it. No other Acharya had, come up with this kind of a plan to make these scriptures not just available, but accessible to the people. The way Prabhupada had made these books accessible to people in general, that is like huge. That is one of the credit that goes to Srila Prabhupada. Of course, even before Srila Prabhupada, there were books written or commentaries written by different acharyas. But Bhagavad Gita as it is, through Bhagavad Gita as it is, he had even popularized the other commentaries of Bhagavad Gita, because he quotes from those commentaries, and devotees then want to go and read those commentaries. the commentaries of Baldev Vidyabhushan, the commentary of Chakravarti Pad, of Ramanujacharya. They were practically unknown, but when Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is was being distributed, devotees came to know that so many different acharyas have commented on Bhagavad Gita, and then they want to read those commentaries also. So Prabhupada has not just made Bhagavad Gita available to not just to Indians, but we know that Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita is getting converted into at least 60 different languages all over the world. It is being distributed. So we have French version, German, Chinese, Japanese, you name a language and you will find Bhagavad Gita as it is in that language. Now we may say that Christians have done a far more better job, but we have to understand that uh, Christianity had existed for thousands of years, and from that perspective, Krishna consciousness, or Prabhupada, when he started preaching, that is far more recent. Not even 100 years have happened so far. So I'm sure as time passes, we will be able to do far more better job. So when I say Christians have done a better job, what I was trying to say is, say for example, in India, we know that there is a Christian preacher who has converted Bible into, so we know that there are 26 languages in India. So all those languages he has converted, but within those languages, there are different dialects also. So he single-handedly actually learned many of the dialects, and then he converted Bible into not just languages, but all the dialects also. So that is like a lot of hard work he had done. So first going from, he is an American, so going from America and living in India and then learning the languages, and then not just language, the different dialects, and then converting a book into that language, it is not easy. But many of the devotees are also doing that. We know that when Srila Prabhupada left the body, he had only converted Srimad Bhagavatam, or translated Bhagavatam up to 10th canto, I believe 13th chapter. And after that, some of the devotees, and I don't think any of those devotees were Indians. They were all non-Indians who actually learned Sanskrit language and then picked up the work. And as a service to Srila Prabhupada, they translated the remaining cantos, chapters. And what we have, the 12 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam that is available to us in different languages, a lot of hard work was also done by those devotees. So that is also a credit that goes to them. So with that context, let's try to discuss where we left yesterday. Abhiram Divya Prabhu had given a wonderful class yesterday. I just share my screen. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, all right. So here is where we had to start. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakhyam Atmanivedanam. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.23. These 9 processes, of which the easiest is Shravanam, hearing the Bhagavad Gita from the realized person, will turn one to thought of the Supreme Being. This will lead to remembering the Supreme Lord and will enable one, upon leaving the body, to attain a spiritual body which is just fit for association with the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada is quoting this famous verse, the 9 limbs of bhakti as we call them. And Prabhupada says that the easiest of them is Shravanam. Just, of course, we may say that even hearing is not easy because we have to maintain our attention. But actually, it is, in one sense, it is easy. And we know that devotion starts from hearing. Shravanam is the most important, and you may also say it's the easiest. Unless we hear the glories of Krishna, unless we understand that we are not the body, we are the soul, and we are meant to serve God, serve Krishna, the our progress in our spiritual life doesn't start. So Shravanam is very, very important. We have this verse also that comes in the 7th chapter, first verse. What is that? So yesterday we discussed the last verse of the 6th chapter, which is Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmanah shraddhavan bhajate yomam sameyuto manomatah. So after that, there is this verse, what is that verse?
Mai asakta mana
Yeah,
partha.
thank you, Mataji. Mai asakta manah partha yogam yunjan madashraya asamshayam samagramam yatha gyasasi tat shrunu. So Krishna says, Shrunu, hear from me. So hearing is very, very important. Actually, this 7.1, we know that the Bhakti section of the Gita starts from the 7th chapter. And right in the beginning of the Bhakti section, Krishna says about hearing, hear from me, Shrunu. So hearing is extremely important. And then let's see what Srila Prabhupada says. The Lord further says, Abhyasa yogena yuktena chetasana anya gamina paramam purusham devyam yati parth anuchintayan. He who meditates on me as the supreme personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Arjuna, is sure to reach me. So abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasana anyagamina. So we have to do abhyas yoga. Abhyas yoga, we may say that what is this abhyas yoga? There is bhakti yoga, there is karma yoga, there is dhyana yoga, there is jnana yoga. Where is this abhyas yoga? So abhyas yoga is basically it is sadhana bhakti. So Prabhupada translates this as at other places he translates Abhyas Yoga as devotional service. Abhyas Yoga comes at in another chapter also, at another place. Anyone remembers where it comes? And that's also one of the very important verses of the Gita.
12th chapter, Prabhu.
Yeah. Which verse is that?
Abhyasepi asamartosi.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is one of the verses, but the one that I was referring to was Abhyas Yogena Tato Mam Ichhaptum Dhananjaya. Abhyas Yogena Tato, do abhyas. So first Krishna says that the highest level of bhakti is that your mind and intelligence is always fixed in me. But then he brings he comes one level down. And then he said, if you cannot do that, then do abhyas yogena tato mam ichhaptum, by practice, by practice develop a desire to attain me. Unless we have that desire to attain Krishna, sometimes we say that, how can we see Krishna? So the process to see Krishna starts from having the desire to see Krishna. Unless we have the desire to see Krishna, to obtain Krishna, we won't be able to see him. So abhyasya yogena tato mam ichhaptum dhananjaya. So this verse is also in line with that verse. So Krishna is saying that abhyasya yogena yuktina chetasa na anya gamina. Practice, and by practice, do not let your attention go away, your consciousness go away. Try to catch your consciousness and bring it back. And so we have to do abhyas for that. It's not easy. So the theme here that is coming is, the essence of Krishna consciousness is that total absorption in Sri Krishna. Prabhupada had said earlier that the essence of Krishna consciousness is total absorption in Sri Krishna. Absorption in the sense our mind and intelligence should be completely engaged, completely absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. So initially it may be difficult because we have so many different things to think about, so many different things to do. There is also this example given that just as an unchaste wife always, she may be physically present at her home and she's doing a lot of work in the home and trying to please the husband, but her consciousness is always with her paramour. She's always thinking about her lover. So in that sense, our consciousness should always be fixed in Krishna. But we may have to do a lot of things in the material world. We may be engaged in so many different things. We have to do our job, we have to take care of our kids, but our consciousness should be fixed in Krishna. So we also have to understand in that sense is that bhakti is not an isolated process. So we know that the other processes that are being talked about in the Bhagavad Gita, most prominently jnana yoga and dhyana yoga. So for both these processes, there is, so we know that in the 6th chapter, Krishna says that to perform dhyana yoga, you have to go to a secluded place, to a forest, and at a secluded place, you completely detach from the outside world. Then you have to sit, and then in a particular posture, and then you have to concentrate your with eyes half open, half closed. Now, it may sound very impractical in this age. We may not be able to do it because you have to just let go all other things and then just focus on that. Similarly, Gyan Yoga is described in detail in the Uddhav Gita section of the Gita, where even for Gyan Yoga, it is mentioned that you have to renounce the world. And a hint of that comes in the 18th chapter, where Krishna first talks about the Varnashram Dharma system. And then the conclusion of Varnadharam system, Varnashram is sannyas, where sannyas is more in terms of Jnana Yoga sannyas that is mentioned over there in the 18th chapter. So those are like isolated processes, but we know that bhakti is not an isolated process. It is a connected process. Everything that we do, whatever we are doing in our life, we may be going to office, we may be we may be doing our job. We can do it in a mood of service to Krishna. And in that way, we can make progress in bhakti. So we know that whatever we are doing, this is a situation that we are being put in by Krishna, and then we have to do our best, and in that way we have to serve Krishna. Whatever condition we may have been put in, we may have been put in a particular family, in a particular work location, and that way we can serve Krishna, always thinking about him, our mind and intelligence completely engaged in Krishna, and at the same time we are engaged externally in the other duties that we have to perform in the material world. And in that way also we can progress in bhakti. This is also that is mentioned by Krishna in 18th chapter. uh, there is a direct verse that comes. We had discussed that when we were discussing in the 18th chapter. So let's see what Srila Prabhupada says again. This is not a very difficult process. However, one must learn it from an experienced person. Tad Vijnanartham sa gurum evabhi gachet. One must approach a person who is already in the practice. The mind is always flying to this and that. But one must practice concentrating the mind always on the form of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, or on the sound of his name. The mind is naturally restless, going hither and thither, but it can rest in the sound vibration of Krishna. One must thus meditate on Paramam Purusham, the supreme personality of Godhead in the spiritual kingdom, the spiritual sky, and thus attain him. The ways and the means for ultimate realization, ultimate attainment are stated in the Bhagavad Gita. And the doors of this knowledge are open for everyone. No one is barred out. All classes of men can approach Lord Krishna by thinking of him. For hearing and thinking of him are possible for everyone. Actually, so the point here is that again we have to somehow or the other we have to fix our mind on Krishna. Now Prabhupada says that mind is by nature restless. It is the nature of the mind to go here and there. It is like a child. If you catch hold of a child, I have a 4-year-old daughter, and if I tell her that you have to sit quiet for next 5 minutes, you are not going to make any sound, you are not going to move, just sit quiet. It's just not possible for her, sitting at one place without making any noise, without doing anything. It's not possible. It's very impractical if I tell her. And the mind is, is similarly, it is like a child. It's very, very extremely restless. Arjuna also accepts this in the 6th chapter. He says to Krishna that Krishna, I can control the wind, but I cannot control my mind. It's very, very obstinate. It's very difficult for me to control my mind. So this is actually accept, and when Arjuna says that, Krishna actually accepts it. He acknowledges it. Yes, Arjuna, indeed it is very difficult, but he said it is possible by by practice and by detachment. So these are the two things that Krishna says to Arjuna. But by practice, important point is practice. Abhyasa yogena tato. So we have to practice. Now, how do we make our mind fixed on Krishna? So we know that the first thing is about hearing. So once we have heard the glories of Krishna, once we have heard that, okay, it is important for us to fix our mind on Krishna, then there are different ways that are being talked about in the scripture, different ways in which we can fix our mind on Krishna. So the most important thing that Srila Prabhupada had given us is the Nam Dhyan, the meditating on the names of Krishna, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, minimum 16 rounds in a day. Now, when we do that, sometimes a lot of devotees develop a taste for that, and they want to go on and on and on. They want to chant more and more, which is good. But sometimes for other devotees, it may become a little difficult that, going beyond 16 or 17 or 20 rounds. So there are other processes also recommended about fixing the mind on Krishna. So one is Nam Dhyan, then we have Rupa Dhyan. Rupa Dhyan is, fixing the mind on the form of Krishna. So how do we fix our mind on the form of Krishna? We can either fix it on the deity of Krishna, which is there in the temple or at our home. We can actually serve the deity. We can bathe the deity. We can, opulently dress the deity. We can serve the deity different things. So that is one thing. Then another way to fix the mind on the form of Krishna is by reading the description of Krishna's body given in the different scriptures. So there are various places in Srimad Bhagavatam, specifically in the 10th canto, we see there are so many places where Krishna's transcendental body is described in detail. Each and every part of his body is described. I was reading uh, the chapter where the Brahma Vimohan Leela, so where Krishna appears in the Vishnu form. So there in 2 verses, very beautifully Krishna's body is described. You know how beautiful the body is. Every part of the body is described over there. So that is the Rupa Dhyan. So we discussed Nama Dhyan, Rupa Dhyan. The third is Guna Dhyan, the different qualities of Krishna. So Krishna has unlimited qualities, but we know that most prominently Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Madhya Leela, I think it's the 23rd chapter, where he talks about 64 qualities of Krishna. And that section is also quoted by in the Nectar of Devotion in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami. So that is the Guna Dhyan. Then we have the Shiksha Dhyan, the words of Krishna. So words of Krishna are talked about in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is actually the words of Krishna. It is the teaching of Krishna. Again, we have Uddhav Gita. So there are different things. Then we have Leela Dhyan. There are different Leelas that are performed by Krishna. Krishna, the full 10th canto is full of the Leelas of Krishna. So we can actually read, and many devotees have some of their favorite Leelas and they want to read it again and again and again. And not just that, in the Srimad Bhagavatam we have leelas performed by different avatars also. So we have the leelas of Lord Ram, we have Varaha avatar, so many avatars are being done. Narsingh Dev avatar is there, in the 7th canto. Such a detailed explanation of Narsingh Dev comes over there. So we can fix our mind on those narrations, the leelas of Krishna or the different avatars. And finally, if something very important that Srila Prabhupada had given us is, doing some practical service for Krishna. Take some service, whatever you are attracted to. Sometimes people would go to Srila Prabhupada and tell and ask Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, what can I do for Krishna? So Prabhupada would counter question them. What do you want to do for Krishna? You tell me, what do you want to do for Krishna? So we have our own natural inclination. Some of the devotees like to, do book distribution. Some of the devotees want to do kirtan. Some of the devotees like to cook in the kitchen, in the temple. Some devotees, they like deity service. So Seva Dhyan is also very important. How can I do my services better? How can I learn from other devotees? They're serving Krishna so nicely. So we take inspiration from other devotees, and then we try to improve our own service for Krishna, our own seva. So doing some practical service and fixing our mind on how to improve that service is also one of the ways we can fix our mind on Krishna. So basically, the point is, and this is also quoted by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He quotes it from Padma Puran. Yena kena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayet. Yena kena prakarena. By this way or that way, some or the other way, I have to fix my mind on Krishna. So that is the key. So in the Vishnu Purana also, there is this principle talked about. The most important principle is, always remember Krishna. Do not forget Krishna. So that means we have to somehow or the other fix our mind on Krishna. We have to always remember him, and we have to make sure that we never forget Krishna. So these are some of the practical ways in which we can fix our mind on Krishna. So before I move forward, are there any questions or comments or corrections about what I have said so far?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, you mentioned about that the American preacher who went to India and converted the Bible in different languages. So people in the Christian religion will also consider that person as a kind of a saintly person or a incarnation of God or something. So how do you kind of justify that? Because he doesn't look like an ordinary person.
In the Christian tradition, there is no concept of avatar or God descending himself. Um, they do consider sometimes Jesus as God incarnated in the body of a human, and actually that is the reason we use the word incarnation. incarnation is the concept that Jesus had a human body like all of us, but some of the followers consider him as God himself. But they have the concept of saints, so they might have given him sainthood, or that okay, and what he did was also good. Now, where credit is due, we have to give that credit. Sometimes we get offended that Christians are going to India and they are deceitfully converting Hindus into Christians, but they are also, they are motivated by their own teachings of Jesus or whatever, and they are putting a lot of effort. They are guided and they believe that their path is the best path, and we have to actually give this path to others. And they're guided by that principle, they're guided by that motivation, and they're putting in a lot of hard work to actually do that. They're making their scriptures available to people in general so that they can read and get benefited. So where
Ganpati Govind, you mentioned that somebody told you guys sound like the early Christians. Didn't you say that at one time?
I think
Someone
Hari Prabhu
was.
might have said that, Mataji,
Oh, I thought you said that.
Yeah, so I mean, we understand that they have this philosophy that my way is the only way. So, and Prabhupada also accepted that their way is also one of the ways. But uh, uh, this is Prabhupada actually accepted Jesus. He said that Jesus is one of the, he considered Jesus as an acharya, and that is true in one sense. What Jesus did was also not something very easy to do. Prabhupada writes in the
But
11th chapter
you're
of,
right, Ganpati Govind. I mean, their greater fault is that they think it's the only way.
right,
But other than that, they do have some great dedicated followers. You
right,
know what I'm
that's true.
saying? And in fact, some of the early Christian preachers, just like how our devotees are now going to every nook and corner of the world, they went to going to like Japan and all that for Westerners to come to places like Japan in those days was like going to North Pole or something like that.
Right,
It wasn't easy for them, and they were not accepted because they were white people, and Japanese traditions were so strong. They were treated as like dirt. You know what I'm saying? They had like no standing, no nothing. Under great difficulty, they did preaching, of Christianity in the Asian countries and in the Eastern world. But still, they did not give up. You know what I'm saying?
right, yeah,
They
no,
they they
exactly,
they had that firm dedication that Christ was there for them and he was on their side.
right, exactly.
So their greater fault is thinking that that's the only way. You know what I'm
That's true,
saying?
yeah. So that
Other
is
than
how,
that, they did have dedication.
right, exactly. So they are dedicated and they're putting their best effort to, and we also have so many devotees who are doing that now. So I think, if coming back to the question that Prabhuji asks, so in the Christian tradition, they don't have the concept that, God will come himself. They have, in their scripture that is mentioned, what is the word that is prophets. So they have different prophets who would come at different intervals and they would, preach. So that it is believed by many Christians that there will be a second coming of Jesus, and at that time Jesus will actually take all the faithfuls along with him to the spiritual world. So the resurrection, the idea of resurrection, that all the people who are faithful, they will be resurrected when the second coming of Jesus would happen. So Abrahamic religions, we know that it started from Judaism. The first prophet came, and then Jesus came as the second prophet. Of course, the Jews don't accept Jesus as the second prophet, but those who accepted Jesus as the second prophet, then Christianity came from there, and then we had Muhammad, who came as the third prophet. But Muhammad said that I am the last. There is no one who is going to come after me. So now the Abrahamic religions, although they have one origin, they don't accept each other. They say that, your path is false, my path is the only way. So within themselves also they have that concept. So it's very difficult for them to comprehend that Hinduism, or Sanatan Dharma, as we call it, is a true path. So it's very, very difficult. But yeah, we understand that in principle, Prabhupada had said that if God is unlimited, there has to be unlimited ways to reach God. How can you say that there is only one narrow way to reach God? And if you don't go through that way, then you are going to go to hell forever. So that is their idea, which sounds very childish and naive. If God is unlimited, there has to be unlimited ways. Otherwise, what's the point in saying that God is unlimited?
But are
So
there really unlimited ways, Ganapati Govind?
within Sanatan Dharma itself, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about at least 4 to 5 ways. And we, at least Prabhupada accepted, even Prophet Muhammad, he had gone to Iran and he had talked highly about Prophet Muhammad. He had talked highly about Jesus Christ. If you can read Bhagavad Gita as it is in the 11th chapter, I believe 54th verse, if I'm not wrong, he writes about Jesus
So then you
Christ.
would think there would be a dozen at the most, maybe couple of dozen bona fide ways. So there
Right.
isn't unlimited ways.
Yeah, I mean, basically the point is there has to be more than one way. So, as the Christians would say,
Yeah, you
or
can
the
say if God is unlimited, there cannot be just one way.
one
That you
way,
can
right?
say,
Yeah,
but you
right.
can't say there are unlimited
That
ways.
is true. Yeah, thank you for correcting Mataji.
Hare
There
Krishna,
are
Prabhu.
other religions also besides these three, but yeah, go ahead, Prabhuji. Om Yo Prabhu.
Prabhu, if you say this is unlimited, then how would you describe this verse? Hare Namabu, Hare Namabu, Hare Namabu Kevalam, Kalau Nastabu, Nastabu, Nastabu Gati Jannata.
So God has different names also in other traditions. Prabhupada also, if you read Science of Self-Realization, he talks about this over there also, that Jehovah and Allah and all these are also names of Krishna only. And if you take those names also, you'll get purified. So we don't have to think that only you have to take name in the sense that only Krishna name is the only name of Krishna. There are many different. God is unlimited. He has unlimited names, and he can be accessed through his unlimited names also.
But one name might have more power than the other, right?
Yeah, we can say that it is mentioned also in the scriptures that 1,000 names of Vishnu is equal to one name of Lord
one name
Ram.
of
Then
Lord Ram,
three
and so many.
three
Yeah,
names of Lord Ram is equal to one name of
one name
Krishna.
of Krishna. Yeah.
But on the spiritual platform, that is, all the names are spiritual. Now, are we saying that Krishna's name is more spiritual than Lord Ram's name? So we have to understand the spirit. What is the spirit over there?
Correct.
Krishna is more intimate. Krishna is the most intimate form of the Lord.
Yeah,
Vishnu
so
is more in.
whether you call Vishnu or Ram or Krishna at the time of your passing, you're still going to go to Vaikuntha.
Right. So you are going to transcend the material world.
Right,
So at the
transcend the
spiritual
material world.
platform, everything is spiritual. So we
Right.
don't have to apply material mathematical concepts over there.
But they might be different flavors even within
Right.
Vaikuntha. You know what I'm saying? Yes.
Right. Yeah. So,
Prabhu, I just one thing I'd like to clarify. Yes, they are correct. For example, my goal is to, I live in Milford, say my goal is to come to Glastonbury Temple, right? So if I set up my goal as going to New Haven, yes, I am correct, but I'm not getting my destination. So all the religions, Abrahamic religions, they set their goal to get to heaven. They never ask to reach God, so they're correct, but they'll get to heaven, but they'll never reach to God. Am I correct?
you can't say that they will never reach to God. Prabhupada, when he came to America, he was asked by reporters that, we have these religions. Do you think that they are false religions? So then why have you come here to convert people? Prabhupada said, I have not come here to convert you or give you something new. I just came here to remind you what Jesus Christ had said. And then he reminded, most prominently, he talked about thou shalt not kill. Jesus had said that, but you have opened, slaughterhouses here. You are killing animals and on mass scale, and what to speak of animals, you are killing cows. At least spare the cows. So Prabhupada had given due whatever due respects to even Jesus Christ. Now what Prabhupada had done is, it's a broader topic, we can discuss that, but at a broader level, I can tell you that what Srila Prabhupada did is, he separated Jesus Christ from Christianity as it exists today. So he said that the Christianity, he didn't directly said that, but it kinds of sounds like that if you really try to understand what Srila Prabhupada is trying to say. So he said that yes, Jesus Christ was an authentic Acharya, and he glorifies Jesus Christ at multiple places. In Srimad Bhagavatam, at least 11 places I have seen Prabhupada talking about Jesus Christ. So he had very high regards for Jesus Christ, but at the same time he said that the version of Christianity that exists today, it is a diluted, perverted form of the teachings that was given originally by Jesus Christ. So he separates the two, and then but we understand that there are certain followers even today who follow the exact teachings of Jesus Christ to the book. So they don't dilute anything, they follow everything exactly as Jesus Christ has said. And if they follow Jesus Christ, if he is an acharya, he has given a particular path, and then if people who would follow that diligently, people who would follow that sincerely, they will be able to reach God. If not in this life, maybe in some other life. So that is true for our devotees also. We can't say that every one of us is going to go back to Godhead in this life itself. Although it will be good if we all can go within this life, but everybody is at different level, and we'll take our own time to reach, depending on at what level we are.
Hare
So
Krishna. Ganapati Govind Prabhu, my obeisance, all goes to Prabhupada. Can I make a comment?
yeah, please, Prabhu, go ahead. You are the authority, please.
No. I was thinking, I heard from my Guru Maharaj that Prabhupada also said, we don't, yes, Prabhupada did acknowledge Jesus Christ and all those, but at the same time, that was more like apad dharma, emergency type of situation. Jesus has given something to the people of that time, place, circumstance. So it's not a replacement for Sanatana Dharma that we have, but it's the other ways, that will merge into Sanatana Dharma, I guess, in summary. So therefore, we don't take it as one of, say, for Vaishnava Sampradayas or like that. But eventually, for that particular time, place, circumstance, Jesus has given something. And the second one is the same thing you said, but in a different way, is that parampara is not intact, So it's not a parampara that's still existing the way that Jesus has given, like you have mentioned.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for that comment.
But by that same token, can I ask a question? If someone is a real, sincere follower of God within Christianity, within Islam, the person is truly seeking God, is it possible then perhaps within another lifetime or something, he will truly get a chance to improve his seeking and go towards God?
Yeah, I heard even in this life, right? Many devotees who came to ISKCON, they were guided by Jesus. My Guru Maharaj was guided by Jesus. So when he was coming, his relatives, they were mad at him, you're going to go to hell and stuff. So he had this intense experience with Jesus where Jesus was telling him, look, to love God, to go to God, you have to be very pure. And Hare Krishnas are pure. So that was it. That experience totally convinced him. And I heard another devotee was praying in the church, tell me more about you. Because there's not much about God in Bible, like Ganapati Govind Prabhu was saying, right? It's that God won't come, it's just the prophet. So if you want to know more about God, they just don't have much information. And he was praying like that in the church, and he came back, somebody gave him a Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, I've heard other devotees also saying they were directed by
Pyari Prabhu also said that, if you remember. Pyari Prabhu is his story that how he was guided by Jesus. So we have our own example right here in Connecticut. So you can talk to him about and understand how Jesus guided him.
Like even for me, when I first came to the temple, when my husband had introduced me, I was like, okay. But it answered a lot of my questions that I've always asked a lot of priests and Catholics, they're because they hold it all close to the vest, but they wouldn't answer my questions. Here, once I started, I'm like, oh, I got all my answers. I'm happy. And been here ever since.
Yeah.
Nice to hear, Jil Mataji.
There is also this famous story of book distribution where a devotee went to a house of a Christian woman with he was going door to door. So he knocked the door of this lady, and then this lady opened the door, and then he gave him a book, and this lady started crying, and then he invited him inside, and then she said that Jesus came to my dream in last night, and he told me that a person will come and he will give you a book. Take that book and read it. So it's a very famous story. Many of you might have heard that. So I think the title is Jesus is on our side, something like that. The title of that story is.
There's also Saint Teresa of Avila, a Spanish nun, and she's very famous, 15th century.
Yeah, I've seen her movie, Prabhu. Yeah.
Yeah, she actually had visions of a dark boy with maidens surrounding him. She described
Yes.
him. She
She
described
was
him.
she was a true devotee, and they said that actually they exhumed her remains and it was intact, her body.
Yeah.
You know, so she was a true devotee. You know,
Yes.
that's what I was saying. If you're seeking God truly in other traditions, also that sincerity, you know, will take you.
So, so going back to the question that Damansur Prabhu was asking about, so they have the concept of prophets, and if you see, we have rough parallels in Sanatan Dharma. We have acharyas. So acharyas are kind of equivalents of prophets, and they would come at a particular time, and according to the time, place, and circumstances, they may have to adjust certain things a little bit, and then they give those teachings in a way that is accessible and intelligible for the people of that particular time. So Srila Prabhupada, who was an acharya himself, had come, and he actually had presented the same Vedic knowledge that had existed since time immemorial. He presented in a way that was intelligible to the contemporary people, and they could adopt it, and they could transform themselves with that knowledge. So they have the concepts of prophet, and a rough parallel to that is what we have as acharyas in our tradition. And acharyas is kind of similar to what the concept of prophet. But in the Vedic culture, we also have the concept of avatars, where God descends himself in his full glory and manifests all his pastimes for all the world to behold and relish, and not just for that time, but for all of eternity. Those pastimes become, uh, immortalized in the different scriptures. They are noted, and so that all of us can also relish, transform ourselves by reading those and make our minds and hearts attracted to the Lord. Krishna also says in 4.9, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yaveti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti. So Arjuna, so Janma and Karma, my Janma and Karma are Divya, they are transcendental. And those who understand this Tattvataha, in truth, Tyaktva Deham, after leaving this body, Punarjanma Naiti, they will not take birth again, but Mameti, they will come back to me. So this concept of avatar, it has no parallels in any of the other religious traditions of the world. Only in the Sanatan Dharma, in the Vedic tradition, we have the concept of avatar, where God descends himself, and we know the reason why he descends from the Bhagavad Gita itself.
Thank you, Prabhu. So I think from the whole discussion, the parallel discussion, what happened, right? Even though there are different processes, everything will culminate to bhakti only, right? Means the examples Srinivas
What
Acharya Prabhu gave, Gita Mala Mataji gave from 15th century, the lady, means she was very devoted. Even though there are different processes in different religions, everything will culminate to bhakti, right? Then only
actually,
one can go back to Godhead.
yeah, I mean, if you see the teachings of that is given by Jesus Christ and even by prophet, the essence is to devote ourselves to God, completely devote ourselves to God. So Jesus also says that God is the Alpha and Omega, and Bhagavad Gita also says the same, I am the beginning and the end and the middle of everything, O Arjuna. And the Jesus also said that we have to love God by all our heart, and we have to devote completely ourselves to God. So that is also like bhakti itself. So Krishna also says that Sardharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. So it is a different, the same thing, but in different words that is told by Jesus. So, ultimately, as you said, yes, everything is, we have to somehow or the other, develop that lust to attain God in our hearts and make our minds and intelligence attached to God, fixed on God somehow or the other. And if we are able to do that, we'll be able to transcend. Now,
Thank you.
what we have in Sanatan Dharma is we have so many different ways in which we can connect ourselves to God, contemplate on God, and we can actually, so we have this, so many pastimes are given. We have Bhagavad Gita, where if we don't like the pastimes, if we like philosophy, then we have Bhagavad Gita. We have other books where philosophy is described in detail. We have Uddhav Gita. So there are so many different ways in which we can contemplate on God. We can fix our mind on God, which is not there in other religions. So they have said we have one person and we have one book. You have to follow this person and follow this book. So that at times becomes too much for people. But in Vedic tradition, we have so many different ways to do that. So that is like one glory of Vedic religions, or Vedic tradition, I should say, not religion. Okay.
One more question, Prabhuji. This is Sanjay. If I can ask.
Yeah, please go ahead, Prabhuji.
So I was wondering, like, because all the Abrahamic religion, there are also differences between, from the Sanatana Dharma in terms of the concept of reincarnation and karma philosophy, right? Because all the Abrahamic religions basically believes in there is only one lifetime, and then after the one lifetime, you have eternal hell or eternal heaven. So how to reconcile that? Although Srinivas Prabhu mentioned that those are like apod dharma, so only mentioned for that times or place or circumstances. So does it mean that that one lifetime scenario, if somebody is sincere to that one lifetime scenario religion, then ultimately he realizes that that's not the truth, and then they have to accept the theory of all the karma and reincarnation, and then ultimately come to the process of Sanatana Dharma to accept the bhakti and the moksha and all these philosophical
Actually,
theories.
yeah, that's a good question. So if you read their scriptures, now we are not the experts in Bible and Quran, and we are not here to translate their scriptures and transcribe it. But devotees who have come from those traditions, they talk about that in the original Bible. So we know that Bible has a tradition of getting changed. The Bible that exists today, it is not the same Bible that Jesus had given. There is also a book that is available on Amazon.com. I'm missing the name of the book. But in that book, they have noted down at what point Bible was changed, who changed it, what verse was added, what verse was removed. To that extent, they have that documentation available. So if you take that back, you will be able to find what is the original Bible, how when it was given originally by Jesus Christ. So it is, the devotees quote many different verses where they show how these the same things that are taught in the Vedic religion, like reincarnation and karma, the philosophy of karma. Like in Bible, it is said, "As you sow, so shall you reap." So it is nothing but karma. What you sow, that is going to come back to you. Similarly, there are references to reincarnation that is given in the Bible, but that have been removed over time. Similarly, there are references to not eat meat, do not kill animals, but that have been removed by people for whatever selfish interest they may have. It is said that the references to reincarnation have been removed because people at that time thought that if people would know that, okay, we have many lifetimes, so they would think that okay, let me enjoy in this life, and next life I will go back to Godhead. So why talk about many different lives? Let them just tell them that there is just one life, and in this life, if you accept Jesus and his teachings, you are going to go to heaven eternally, and if you don't accept it, you are going to go to hell. So that way it will give them a motivation to perfect themselves in this one lifetime itself. But that kind of fired back in one sense. So even in Islam also, now Islam, if you talk about if you talk to any Muslim, no Muslim will accept that by Quran has been interpolated. But in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition itself, we have this Prabhuji, Airawat Prabhu. He comes from Muslim background. He has written many books, and he actually writes that in his books that Quran has been interpolated. So he writes that Quran, as it exists today, it was written several years after Muhammad had passed away. So the original teachings that were given by Prophet Muhammad, they are not exactly. Especially, he says that the verses that talk about violence for non-believers, those verses were interpolated, and there are several other verses. So you have to read those books to find out what was the original teaching of Quran that was given by Prophet Muhammad, and how it has been presented today to the contemporary people. And there have been, as Prabhuji was also saying, Srinivasacharya Prabhu just now, that parampara is broken somehow or the other. It's not the same teachings that were given by the original prophet. People have added or removed according to their own whims and fantasies. So did I answer your question, Sanjay Prabhu?
Yeah, kind of. So basically, what if I may summarize, basically we're saying that the original teachings of the prophets were lost in terms of time, and the parampara succession is broken. So the teachings that as it exists today are not the original teachings
Exactly.
that was provided, but for Christianity, yes, I agree. I think even recently there has been a lot of research on it, and they actually call something called apoplectic Bible, which is the first three books, which are more ancient, and they are more harmonized between each other, versus the last book, which is the Matthew, and that's the one which says, I think the last one I forgot, the John or I think John or Matthew, which is like more my way is the only way, or everybody
Right.
should follow my. So it's like the much later. So I think that part is more well established right now. But for Islam, I heard about all this theory, but it's less proof, because no Muslim or nobody will accept that, at least that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. No Muslim is going to accept it, but at least for Christians, they accept it. I remember the name of the book now. It's called Misquoting Jesus. It's
Yeah.
available on Amazon.com. You can buy that book and read how Bible has changed over the years. Misquoting Jesus.
Okay.
So,
Sure.
but if you read the history of Islam, that they have violently, whoever had rebelled, that they are doing something wrong and all, they had very violently killed them. So we know that the two most prominent followers of Prophet Muhammad himself, one of them, Ali, was brutally killed, and his family was also brutally killed, slaughtered.
Yeah.
So
there are a
so
lot
they
of.
have this history of violence
Yeah.
after Prophet left. So of course there was a lot of violence even when he was there, but especially after he left, there was so many things that have happened and transcribed, which cannot be explained very easily by any of the Muslims.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So, right, how do we prove that Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is also not interpolated, changed?
So, okay, yeah, that's a good question. So we know that the knowledge has been preserved in tradition. So for us, the way to know that for Bhagavad Gita, we know Mahabharata is mentioned even by Madhvacharya in Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnay. He writes that both Mahabharata and Ramayana have been heavily interpolated. But he also says that the essential import is bright as sunlight. The essential import is still intact. But how do we know if Bhagavad Gita has been interpolated or not been interpolated? So we have the commentaries available of Acharyas. So we have Prabhupada's commentary, then Prabhupada quotes the previous Acharya, and then the exact same verses that comes in Prabhupada's commentary also comes in the previous Acharyas. So each previous Acharya is quoting the previous Acharya, like that. The oldest commentary that is available to us is the commentary done by Shankaracharya, who is not in our tradition, but the same verses as they exist, there might be like one or two minor differences in the verses, not much, But the same verses that exist in Bhagavad Gita as it is, the same verses you will find that it also exists in the commentary of Shankaracharya. So that is the oldest commentary that is available. But we also see that Shankaracharya in his commentary, he's quoting some of the previous acharyas. So Shankaracharya's commentary is about 1500 years old. And he is quoting some of the previous acharya who had existed 300 to 400 years before Shankaracharya had come. So we know that in those times, this concept of printing press and all those things did not exist. The books were more either written on palm leaves or, they were not preserved easily. And this concept of printing, etc., was not there. So only few scholars would have access to these scriptures. And in that way, these books will come down, the teachings would come down in parampara. So we can fairly say that in last 2000 years, if the verses have not changed, then it wouldn't have changed even before that also. Besides that, you can also read the Sandarbhas given by Jiva Goswami, where he writes elaborately about how, for example, Bhagavad Sandarbha, where he says that, what is that verse that he quotes? Sarva Praman Chakravarti Bhuta, he talks about Srimad Bhagavatam. He establishes the authenticity and originality of Srimad Bhagavatam, that Srimad Bhagavatam as it exists today is the original Srimad Bhagavatam that was spoken by Shukdev Goswami too. So he gives enough proofs for us to be able to understand. So if you want to go into the technical details, you can read that. But he also writes that only 6% of the Vedic knowledge is available to us now. Most of the 94% of the Vedic knowledge has been lost either to interpolation or they are just not available, not to be found anywhere. So what we have is only 6% of the true knowledge that is available in its true essence, true words. Everything else has been lost. So Rasraj, did I answer your question?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other last comments or questions? I don't think I have time now to start.
No, yeah. So some people do say, I mean, I've had this argument given to be some of my family, so they say, like, how do you know that Prabhupada is not translating and interpreting it also? He's also giving a certain meaning to a verse, just like, the impersonalists are, So how, then I have to tell them that, that he's an acharya. He's just by his practice, you can tell that he's an elevated person, and Krishna himself is speaking to him and giving him the instructions to translate. But they have that argument, how do you know that he's also interpreting just like the others?
So there are multiple ways in which this can be answered. So one is that Prabhupada is quoting the previous acharya. So you can go back like that. So he quotes most prominent Chakravarti Pad, and you can see the same commentary, the same, not it's not like word to word same, but the essence of the commentary is the same. So evam parampara praptam, so this parampara is maintained. So he is not giving anything new. In a sense that I'm innovating something and giving you something. I'm telling you that actually Lord Shiva is the personality of God, but I'm innovating and I'm telling you that Krishna is the supreme personality. He's not doing like that. So all the acharyas, starting from Madhvacharya, even before that, they have accepted Krishna, and he is giving the same thing. And then other thing is, now this is a larger topic, Mataji, about there is this whole debate that is there, that Bhagavad Gita as it is. At times, the literal meaning that Srila Prabhupada is given, the literal translation is not accurate, and people give different references and they quote, and it's a broader topic to discuss. But in conclusion, I would say, long story short, what Srila Prabhupada does in Bhagavad Gita as it is Krishna actually builds his arguments. He goes step by step by step. At the end, he gives us bhakti as the supreme most process. He says Saradharman Parityajya Mam. So he says Man Mana Bhav Mad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. Even before that, he says this is my supreme instruction. Sarva Guhyatamam. Anyway, I don't remember the verse, but he says this is my supreme instruction and this is the most confidential knowledge that I'm giving it to you. That is 64. 65 it says Man Mana Bhav Mad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru Mam Evashyasi Satyam Te Pratijane Priyosi Me. So become my devotee, offer obeisances to me. So basically he says bhakti is my supreme instruction. And then he says tardhanman parityajya mamekam sharanam vrajam aham tvam sarvapabhayo mokshayami mashucha. So Prabhupada says that throughout the Bhagavad Gita, the same thing that Krishna had given in the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada very expertly put that throughout. Even in the second chapter, third chapter, you see Krishna, Prabhupada is talking about bhakti, bhakti, bhakti everywhere. So the point is that Prabhupada himself said in the lecture that in Kali Yuga people have no time, no intelligence to understand, their lives are short. So they will just read one verse of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, this verse says that, okay, I have to go to the jungle and I have to, sit in this posture and I have to renounce completely and I have to follow brahmacharya. Okay, this is not practical. Keep it, close it and keep it. so he actually says that people have no intelligence, no time, so he actually gives the whole essence of Gita in almost every purport. He says everywhere he writes that bhakti is the essence, bhakti is the essence. So he's not just giving us a literal translation of Bhagavad Gita. He's giving us the final conclusion of Bhagavad Gita as it is given by Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita.
Every other page is devotional service. Yeah,
exactly. Like if you, for example, it's very, in some way, if you understand from these people, you may think that, oh yeah, what they're saying makes sense, because in the verse where Krishna is saying that you have to go to the jungle and you have to, you have to do this, have to completely renounce, you have to sit in a secluded place, and there Prabhupada in the purport right that this is not practical, you should stay at home and chant Hare Krishna. So you might say Prabhupada is giving commentary or he's cancelling the words of Krishna. so actually Krishna himself cancels his own words in the later in the Bhagavad Gita. He says Sardhanman parityajya mamekam sharanam vrajam. So just forget everything and surrender to me. So Prabhupada does that throughout the Gita. What Krishna does at the end, Prabhupada does at the throughout the Gita. And he also explains why he's doing this. So
that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, I think
basically Prabhupada gives us the practicality of the Bhagavad Gita, how we can practice it in a better way.
And I was also going to say, and Ganapati, that the proof of the pudding is in the eating, right? There's a saying in English that, if you have, once you taste it, is it good or not?
Yeah, that's very
Somebody
true.
might say, oh, this pudding is so great. Somebody might say the pudding is not so great. Somebody might say it's medium. You can say whatever you want. But once you eat it, you can tell the taste, So is it making an impact? And it is, right? So the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
True, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I know. Prabhu, Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes,
I know we're running out of time. Very quick, like 10 seconds. One question. One devotee asked a question to Ramapada Swami Maharaj that why did Prabhupada did not literally, translate some of the wordings, and Ramapada Swami Maharaj gave a very beautiful answer. He said because Prabhupada did all the hard work and he didn't want us to go through all the scriptures. He found the meaning, and he gave a beautiful example. There's a verse in Bhagavatam, Krishna Barna Tisha Krishna, right? So Tisha Krishna means non-black, but Prabhupada translated as yellow color incarnation will come. Yeah. So he said, why non-black is yellow? Non-black could be red. Then there is another verse they're saying that Supreme Lord has three other colors, and red, and some other color, and yellow. So other two colors already incarnated. So only yellow color left. So Ramapada Swami Maharaj, the point he was trying to make is that, instead of going through all the scriptures, Prabhupada made it easy for us. So that's one point. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, that makes nice sense. Thank you, Amiya Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. All right, I think we can offer obeisances to the Vaishnavas. I think Prabhuji wants to make an announcement. Rasraj Prabhu, you want to make an announcement?
No announcement, just self-explanatory. Just I'm sharing.
Okay.
Read it.
All right. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Just whoever is not aware of, they can.
Yeah.
This is a Mahagita Jayanti, huh?